Welcome once again to the Legion of Reason Diversion, episode 219. Our guest this evening is Seth Andrews, aka the Thinking Atheist, a former Christian music DJ. Apostate Seth. We should actually have something like apostles, but call them apostates. I think you'd be the first one. Apostate Seth.
Let's not.
Has written two books, one called Deconverted and Sacred Cows, and continues to have an impact on new non-believers. Welcome once again, Seth. I don't know if you remember the last time we were in Kamloops in a hotel room and you were totally bagged.
Yeah, that just sounds wrong. But yeah, we recorded a broadcast in a hotel room. And it's always a pleasure. It really is a real honor to be a part of these conversations. I always have to clarify after your intro, I'm not the Thinking Atheist. I host the Thinking Atheist. Thinking Atheist is an icon that represents that we reject faith and pursue reason. I always find myself standing on stage with very enlightened minds. And I always have to tell people, when I'm standing next to Steven Pinker or Dr. Carolyn Porco or Dr. Eugenie Scott or these great minds, I ain't one of them. I'm just a guy who's sort of navigating the journey along with everybody else. So,
okay.
I think we all are, including the people that we, you are a figure and you are intelligent, so don't undermine yourself. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Well, I often say people look up to like Dawkins and those types here. They see them on these larger stages, but they relate to us. You and I, we're just people who, we're just trying to figure it out. Whatever's true, let's figure that out. And we're just human beings trying to live our lives and sharing the journey with other people, hopefully making each other sharper and stronger in the process.
Oh, well said. Yeah. Yeah. So I have
Randy, I have a quick technical question. It appears that can we change the title of this stream to not Lalo?
I've been having trouble with that on on the streams. No, I'll do that in post. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of it is a technical issue. Then I can't figure out how to change that.
Yeah,
I
just actually
love
tried
technical
to change
issues.
it.
I love them when they happen live. I love them when you have no idea how to fix them live.
But you don't know. We do not fix them live. No.
You just surrender to the moment and you just figure it out later.
It's live. You just let it be. Like the Beatles saying, let it be.
Let it be.
Yeah, we'll fix it later.
It's fine on YouTube.
It's okay. Oh, okay, sure. YouTube's great.
On YouTube, not Facebook, but...
Okay, well, so we're just a couple of housekeeping things. Chris, you this morning were on another podcast. You usurper. You turncoat. There we go. Turncoat.
I was a guest.
It was you were on the So You Think You're a Skeptic podcast.
Yes, I was.
Did you have fun?
Yeah. I did have fun, of course. Yeah, as always.
Yeah. And the other thing I have to mention is that on the Facebook page, the Legion of Reason Diversion Facebook page, my talk at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. Can you say that, Seth? Saskatoon?
Saskatoon, Saskatchewan? Say it. I can't say it well. Saskatoon. I had a hard time getting I was saying Regina. I had a hard time with that when we were doing the conference there.
Regina. That's a little south of Saskatoon. Yeah, that actually is in Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
I've gotten, I feel like a connection to you guys. I've gotten hooked on a television show on Netflix. It's called, there's two versions. There's Canada's Worst Drivers and Canada's Worst Handymen. Do you guys watch?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Or you just import it down south to us in the United States?
So you mean that you're feeling connected to Canadians in general and not specifically us, right?
You need to watch Trailer Park Boys. Trailer Park Boys, the best export from Canada.
like there are several times during the broadcast when you see like there's a guy who's hammering screws in, and there's people that they're nailing their own workbenches to the floor, and all of these horrible things.
Better.
And you've
one
got
of those guys is a Facebook friend of mine now.
Oh no!
No way.
I think so.
He
like
can
6
operate a
degrees
computer.
of separation there. Yeah. Well,
barely, but yeah.
we occasionally will hear that a boot, and
A boot. Oh
and,
no, nobody says that.
someone's name. Her name's not Marley. It's Marley. It's Marley. So we'll hear a little bit of that up north, and I feel a connection. And also, I've been watching curling. So now I really want to come up north. You guys can teach me the sport. We'll bond over.
If you don't break your legs, that's.
I'm in. I'm in. Try it.
It's for beginners. Actually, it is a dangerous sport. It's not uncommon to have broken limbs.
Oh, stop! Curling.
Seriously.
Yeah, I'm thinking
seriously.
Really.
It's
Imagine
very
if
common.
that in junior high.
Motorcycle jumping is a dangerous sport. Freaking curling. You're just the stone goes from here to there.
That's true. But so
Like
you go.
shuffleboard.
Sometimes you go from 6 feet up to 0 in a very rapid pace.
I must. It's on my bucket list. I must learn it. I must play it.
I used to curl 5 nights a week. That's what
my people will contact your people. We'll go out. It'll be a wild night.
Yeah.
But it is honestly one of those things that I must fully learn how to play, and I must actually play, and it must happen in the next 12 months. So if I come up north, we got a date. We'll make it happen.
Sure,
okay?
absolutely. Yeah,
Sounds good. Actually,
Americans do play curling. They're actually pretty good.
So it doesn't count. Not here.
No,
you
no.
have to go. Have to be in Canada.
I'm just.
Well,
when is the Alberta Secular Conference?
Hell if I know.
March, May, May.
Oh,
It was
It was just
earlier.
announced,
Yeah.
so I can't remember. But
I have no
If we
idea.
hit, there's an event up
possibility,
there.
right?
It all
In
comes
Calgary,
together.
yeah.
There will be a convergence of heathens upon the ice.
Yes.
And I just want to be the person who shouts. I don't know what those codes or signals are. But it's like, yeah, whatever. They're yelling down the ice.
Sweep,
I want to be
boys,
that.
sweep. That's usually what it's like.
Forgive the
So
digression. Forgive the digression.
So Tyler, who I podcasted with this morning, he's blind, and he's saying that he's definitely Canada's worst driver. I would believe that for sure. And he wants me to ask you if you know what our national sport is, Seth.
Oh,
I know what it is.
Yes, hockey.
You're wrong.
it's not.
Hockey.
Believe
it's
it or
not.
not, it's not. Nope.
What is it? What's the
Lacrosse.
national sport?
It's lacrosse.
Really?
Okay,
Both of my sons played lacrosse.
All right. Well, I learned something new
I
today.
never
My
played lacrosse.
education continues.
There you go. I don't know. That's because Americans play that a lot too. I mean, I don't know why. It's a travesty. It should be hockey. You're right, but it isn't. I don't make the
Lacrosse
rules.
is
I don't
actually
make the
kind of
rules.
more brutal.
Somebody posted on Facebook, what's your nation's animal symbol or whatever, and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to
You're gonna make us
answer.
say that.
No, we don't go there.
Yeah, Seth, do you know what it is?
I just don't know. I have no idea.
Our national animal is a beaver, so
Isn't
So it's
that is the saddest
What-
thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
What a riveting country you are.
I mean, America has its eagle. I mean, this majestic bird
Majestic
of prey,
bird. Yeah,
and we
yeah.
have something that builds
Eats
dikes
trees.
and floods roads.
It's just
Yeah,
There
well,
used to
Wait
be
the
the
crap out of
trade.
you.
The fur trade was a big thing way back when.
Oh, so
and
our
they
national
skinned the
animal
beavers.
is one that got killed a lot. That's just.
Yes. The hats were very fine.
I'm sure
I
they
have
were.
nothing to contribute here. I'm
They
so
were furry
sorry.
hats.
I'm
Thank you for
embarrassed.
the tidbit of information.
I'm embarrassed.
Really appreciate
Sometimes. Oh well. Anyway, so Seth, I don't know if I've ever asked you this question. When you came out as an atheist, I remember the time, but did you have any big blowback from that?
Well, I mean, it was a gradual sort of emergence for me. You have to remember that I was working as a video producer at the time. I'd come out of
Right.
radio and gone into video production. I was working as a video producer for an owner who was hugely religious, and probably 80% of the company clientele was churches. And so, I mean, imagine here I am going through this journey, and if I had said aloud, hey, I may be, the videos I'm creating might be based on a lie. I might be propagating these churches that are actually lying to people without even realizing it. They're helping to spread non-truths. They're damaging people. I may not believe a word of this crap. And I was terrified. I was thinking, here I am approaching midlife. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my house. I want to lose everything. And so I was, I spent the first 2 years managing the Thinking Atheist website without ever showing my face. You just saw that icon, the thinking person icon with the light bulb. The first year of the radio show I did, they just knew my first name. I'd never had my face on any of the thumbnails. And so it was only after a couple of years of even doing what I do as an atheist activist that I came out. So it was a stair-stepping for me, and it was really pretty terrifying. I lost a lot of sleep. I had a constant knot in my gut. What's going to happen in my life? What are the consequences? Professional, familial, and I managed to come out the other side. But it was a long, several-year journey for me.
Yeah, I think especially in where you're at in Oklahoma, it's kind of in that area where religion is pervasive and everybody just assumes that you're religious, and when they find out, you don't know what the reaction's going to be. I mean, it's different.
They cock their head like a cocker spaniel is what happens. You're like, you're an atheist, and they just go, like your dog whenever you say
but
a
you
word
don't
they don't
horns.
understand.
Where's your horns? Where's your tail?
A lot of people in this community, they just don't know what to do with the word. They're shocked and surprised and fascinated and scared all at the same time. I've given a copy by their request of my autobiography to more than a few people, and several of them wouldn't finish it. Like, they got a certain number of pages in, and they just gave it back. And then, they're like, it was just too hard to get through. I just couldn't read it. It hurt too much. And I think what maybe they were saying wasn't, oh, Seth, my heart grieved for you because I felt like you were missing the love of Jesus. But hey, the stuff you were saying was actually kind of spot on and making sense. And I was sort of terrified. And so I didn't want to go any further down the rabbit hole. That's what I think they meant. Here's your book back, and then they just stopped talking about it. And we always talk about other things. So,
well, it plants a seed, right?
I'm a curiosity I'm the guy that they warn you about before you go to the family function. Seth's going to be here in a little bit now. You need to know this about him, but he's really a nice guy. So, but overall, it could be a lot worse. I could have been born in freaking Saudi Arabia, for Pete's sake.
Really.
It's a challenge with family and culture, but it's all good. I've got no complaints. And thanks to the community that I'm a part of and my listeners, and I mean, in many ways, they are my family. They're the people I feel so connected to. They've given me tremendous love and support, and they challenge me and make me better. So I've got no concerns or complaints. My life is good.
That's so much for the prosperity gospel right there.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'd name it and claim it if I could, but
Yeah.
it just hasn't worked out.
You don't sound like an angry atheist either.
I had my moments. I will say, when I first came out, I felt like I'd wasted so much time, and I was kind of mad at myself, for not being smarter and figuring it out sooner. I still get angry when I feel like everybody's pawing at me. You guys know that feeling where they just look at you like, oh, I'm so sorry that you don't really understand the love of Jesus. It's just terrible.
Yeah. I get that here.
No, I don't.
Actually,
You guys in Calgary, you make me sick.
Yeah.
We're this is an oasis.
My dad's an
reason
atheist.
here.
My mom's, describes as agnostic. So I didn't even think there was anything strange about being an atheist. I had no idea it was even an issue. I mean, other than, knowing throughout history and other places in the world that people were being persecuted. But I had no idea it was so pervasive in the U.S. until just a few years ago, really.
It's not even for me, Christy. It's not even about, the fact that they believe something that is demonstrably not true. That makes me nuts, But what really gets me is this weird permission they give themselves to cross boundaries and step in, especially parents, to step over that, to sort of family line into my home, my life, my personal affairs, to declare to me, well, no, Seth, there's no way you can truly be happy. Well, actually, I am. I've never been happier in my life. Oh, no, you're not. You're miserable, man. I'm genuinely happy.
And there's that assumption, because they tell each other in the churches around here that you're innately evil. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah. I'm the cause of the world's ills.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course,
you're not gay though, right? Like,
well, my parents would rather I have come out gay than
so.
atheist. I really wish they would have preferred it, not by much, but
by a margin.
There's also a part of me that's kind of, I would rather be an atheist 20 minutes from Oral Roberts University, which is where I live, in Jesustown, USA, here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Part of me would rather be an atheist here than in a place where it doesn't matter, because you have more opportunities to have those discussions and to plant the seeds of doubt. So I'm good. I just bought a house here. It looks like I'm committed for at least a few more years.
Yeah.
So.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Does it have
I bought a payment book.
Does it have the cellar?
Yeah.
The tornado cellar?
I'm putting another storm shelter in and come with.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
I've been through 2 tornadoes in my life. I've been, right on top, and they've left their mark, but they also left with me a real fascination. I'm fascinated by twisters, and so I would struggle, especially as a professional videographer, if an EF4 is blowing through the neighborhood. I would be in my Frady hole, sure, but I'd probably have like one hand out the top of it with my camera or my cell phone going, dude, I'm getting some awesome footage, man. It's going to be great. I'm going to call the news stations. That's me as well. So, but no, I'm going to have to dig another hole and put another storm shelter in probably early next spring. So we'll see.
Yeah, they're pretty nasty down here. You get them like how often? Like almost during season, it's like one a day almost.
In the region. No, I mean this part of the United States is this. They call it Tornado Alley because it's where these cold and warm air masses meet, and it just provides, especially in the spring and some months during the fall, a prime sort of a central location for the creation of tornadoes, and we have there are hundreds of them all around the region every single year, and they're so common that many people have become a little blasé about them. You see the flashing red on the radar. Yeah, you're kind of interested, but you're not running for the hills. You're not digging a hole in the ground. You're not hiding under the house with a mattress on your head. Meanwhile, I have my relatives who came in from Minnesota. If the tornado sirens went off, they would just have lost their minds. They would have just absolutely melted down. And so there's a normalization that's happened here. But, we also do have a healthy respect for nature and for the damage it can do. And of course, around here, we've had there's a town 90 miles away, Moore, Oklahoma. It's been pretty much wiped out 3 times in 15 years. And of course, every freaking time after the death of dozens, every time it happens, it's like, God bless Moore. Thank God. Praise God. More people weren't killed. God, please help us with the rescue efforts. And I'm looking at human beings doing all the cleaning up and the rebuilding. And I'm just like, hello.
They're not thinking it through. They don't understand the implications
tornado,
of those
if you
things.
Believe that?
Right.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Well, who said the tornado if you're a believer in that kind of thing? Right?
That only 48 people were killed instead of 50.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Lord is good. I just
can't do any
it's
wrong.
Bizarre.
Yeah. We get out of. Well, for God, there is nothing to get out of. So, I was going to say get out of purgatory free card, but it's the ultimate free pass, right? And can't lose. Heads I win, tails you lose. There. So, do you have any new books coming out? Are you working on it?
The only thing I'm working on right now, and part of it is just because I am, I don't know, after doing this since 2009, I need some variety. And you actually see this a little bit in the topics and themes of my show. I love talking about and challenging religious claims, and I love helping people sort of break free from the chains of superstition, or at least find their own path on their own terms. I love telling stories, but I also want to talk about life stuff, And I mean, I've got another couple of books I'm nibbling at in the background that won't come to fruition anytime soon. But what I'm looking to probably release next September on Audible will be, because we have developed every October a podcast of hugely popular ghost stories, and I've got kind of a knack for storytelling. We put together these highly produced sort of immersive ghost stories that people have really come to enjoy. Well, if you're going to put weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of work into the production of the stories, I'm assembling some of the ones that are broadcast and producing new material as well. And my plan is to put together a complete, with bonus materials, ghost stories audiobook that we'll release in September of next year. And it's interesting to watch people who are like, well, how can you be an atheist and enjoy stories about ghosts? And I'm like, well, geez, how can you be an atheist and go to a Harry Potter movie?
Exactly.
Give me a break. Like, how can you be an atheist and enjoy Tolkien if you don't believe in the characters and Frodo? It just makes no sense to me. Of course, we can operate in the theater of the imagination, and we can tell stories and those types of things. And so that's probably what I'm going to be working on for a good part of the spring of next year for release in September.
That's good.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. In time for Halloween. Yeah.
In time for Halloween. Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah. We got a couple of news stories I really wanted to cover today. One of them was I don't know which we want to do first, because one of them is kind of a hot button topic with me. And the whole Laurier thing. I don't know if I want to start with that, because I know I'm going to be triggered.
We should end with that one.
Yeah, we should end with that. There's a couple of cases, Seth, that have come across our radar where a child was, basically professional medical help was withheld from that child, and resulting in their death. Two in Alberta. And fortunately, the legal system stepped in, and they've been sentenced. Tamara Lovett was one. She was sentenced to 3 years, I believe. Was it not 3 years? I think. And her child had strep. And it's something really, really simple to treat, and this one's kind of a weird case, because we're not really sure if this was just a distrust of medicine or what have you. The other case was the Stephans. Their child was taken to a naturopath, and or they called,
and the naturopath even told them take him to a doctor.
Yeah, and they still didn't do that. They are members of Latter-day Saints Church.
And they sell True Hope vitamins. Yes. They counsel people to go off of their mental health meds. Schizophrenics. There was one schizophrenic in BC who was counseled to go off his meds and take these vitamins. He killed his parents.
Yeah, what is your take on this? Because, this is already a punishment. You've lost your child, and now you're given a 3-year sentence in the case of Lovett. I think it was several months for the Stephans. I
think the mom was on house arrest and the dad was supposed to do some time in court, but they're going to take it to, is it Supreme Court now?
Well, they have leave to take it to the Supreme Court, because they just appealed that sentence, and it was upheld, but it was a 2-1 decision. So that means they can go to the Supreme Court. It doesn't mean the Supreme Court will hear it. That's up to the Supreme Court.
Well, and in this case, the kid had viral meningitis, and there was a vaccine for it, which of course they didn't get. They didn't call the ambulance until he stopped breathing. Yeah. Then they blamed the ambulance for getting there. But when they took him to the naturopath, he was already stiff, so stiff he couldn't sit.
Yeah, they'd put him on a mattress to get him in the car, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Well, he was.
And if I may say something. Mm-hmm. The other case you were talking about here in Calgary.
Oh, the Lovett case.
It turns out I know somebody who knows somebody, basically, and she's, I think, just a new agey,
Yeah, very new agey, but she homeschooled.
Yeah.
She wouldn't let too many people in her life. She used oregano oil.
Natural childbirth and the whole thing. Huh? Yeah.
She basically was hiding from mainstream anything to do with medical.
But
so I think by implication, mistrust is built in there, right?
Yeah. But what should a society do, a compassionate society, when in this case, this is a complicated issue. I personally don't have any real answer to this, but
in the case of Lovett.
Oh, so go ahead.
Well, in the case of Lovett, she showed remorse, whereas this couple is showing no remorse.
Oh yeah, that's
they're
a
just
good point. That's a good point.
Blaming every like you said, blaming
the ambulance driver,
ambulance, this and blaming that, and just not looking in the mirror and acknowledging that they actually did anything wrong.
Well, I think imagine if this couple had decided that, they, with a young child in their home, they lived next to a very busy street or intersection, and for any number of reasons, they felt it was wrong to put a fence in the backyard. It's a waste of resources. It's all a racket. It's all a scam, whatever reasoning they might come up with. And yet they allow the child to go out and play in the yard next to all of this heavy traffic. A child that requires guardianship, that really doesn't have the capacity to make these decisions, to know what the right answers are, to protect himself in the important ways. And the child, ends up wandering out and getting struck. I mean, we have to keep the parents accountable. It's not a perfect metaphor, but when I see these people, and you're talking about the Stephans, who are out there helping to promote the Vaxxed film, which is just built on a house of cards, an absolute cacophony of lies. And you realize that, as is the case with religious indoctrination and so much else, it's the child who pays the price for the ignorance and the stupidity and the recklessness of the parents. I think we as a society have to impose some serious consequences on the mother and the father. It's interesting too to watch the couple. I'm here down watching sort of from afar, but from my perspective, it looks like they're framing it as do you really want the government to tell you how to raise your children? They really made it a David and Goliath kind of a fight, where they are David and the big bad government wants to reach in and sort of desecrate parents' sovereign rights, take away their ability to properly parent as individuals, take away their own decision-making process, and just take over. And of course, that's not the case at all. So to me, I mean, that is a hugely dishonest framing of it. I think there have to be serious consequences. I think I support imprisonment, and not just a short-term slap on the wrist for the sake of appearances, but a genuine punishment in place. I mean, it's imperfect, but I think it has to happen.
Well, in the case of the Stephans, though, there are the children involved, so I don't know. That's why the mother, it's a bit sexist, but the mother received
house arrest.
Yeah. Well, it was house arrest.
To go to church. She was allowed to go to church and to doctor's appointments. And I think if they just allowed her to go to doctor's appointments, she might be better off.
How often do these young children who just don't have a choice in the matter end up paying for the mistakes, the idiocy of their mothers and fathers? And I think that's ultimately where it has to come down. And if we've had these people on the head and say, well, it's your right to parent however you please. You're essentially declaring the child doesn't have rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's child neglect.
Yeah.
So,
as opposed to
they're getting away with neglecting children based on misinformation. And those Stephans in particular have profit that they're worried about.
What did the kids they thought it was the flu or something, and they're giving them smoothies with horseradish and stuff in it, and
some oils.
Yeah.
A friend, an associate who happens to be a nurse is like, hey, this looks like meningitis. And they still, what would you do as a parent? Hell, I'd be dry. I'd already be in motion to the hospital.
Well, they don't have a proper respect for microbes at all. Meningitis? What is that? They don't care.
A rejection of distrust of science, Do we think that the parents don't genuinely love their children? Well, I'm not prepared to say that, but I do. Yeah. I'm prepared to say that their perceptions about how to care for a child are so broken for any number of reasons.
Dunning-Kruger.
We as a society have to impose consequences for the sake of protecting children. We just have no choice.
Yeah, I think I'd probably come down on that. I definitely would have to say that there would be some punishment somewhere, because at the very least, it actually gets the message out there that no, you
kill
can't
your child,
just do nothing. And we allow parents to have a lot of leeway in how to raise children, but there are some limits that you can't go beyond. And I think that when you do not give the child the standard of care that is available and freely in Canada, by the way. I mean, we have a single-payer system.
Mm-hmm.
There's no excuse for it.
You pay more for this homeopathic crap
than you do for medical care.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's an interesting angle, too, when you hear about people in the business of natural remedies, homeopathy, the naturopathic doctors and whatnot, and they're talking about the big business of medicine. Yeah. They just neglect the fact that, all of these sort of natural remedies and, the essential oils and, shark cartilage and everything else, all that's a multi-billion-dollar industry right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just a convenient thing.
And sometimes if you look at the really fine print on some of that stuff, you'll see that it actually is big pharma that's making that money too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's crazy. So. There's this anti-intellectualism that is pervasive in society now. Again, it's probably happened before, where there's, like that guy in Texas that said, we have to stand up to these experts.
And
the profound lunacy of such a statement,
Yeah, and was it one of the Rick Perry, I want to say, who said Obama's such a snob because he wants kids to get a college education. Like,
oh gosh.
What do you want the president to say? Like, just dumb them down, right? Like, really? That's snobbish.
Strange to see us distrust the processes for obtaining knowledge and bettering the information we have. But when, you have these sort of, it's like when the cigarette industry there's a book and a film based on the book called The Merchants of Doubt, which talk about how, they go out and essentially feed into the public an attitude of, well, who really knows? Can you really say it's bad for you? I mean, can you really trust the scientists? And, it's been effective because you have this is absolutely true. I was getting a physical. I'm at the age when you have to go in for a physical. And I was getting some blood drawn, right? And the lady, a phlebotomist, she wasn't even a nurse, fortunately, but she was just taking the blood. And I don't remember how it came up, but as she is, I'm not making this up, just about as she was about to put the needle in my arm, we started talking about, we were talking about cancer. My wife works in the medical field and she deals a lot with cancer patients. And so she said, with a straight face and all conviction, a woman who is in healthcare, she said, you know what? Between you and me, I think the government's giving people cancer. I think they're putting it in our food and they're causing us. And, like in those chemtrails. Now she's got the needle in my arm, and I'm like, can I get to somebody else? Can I trade
a second opinion?
I need somebody who's pro-science, who's sticking these syringes in my body. Wow. But the Merchants of Doubt have been so effective, and people can often be so conspiracy-minded that they overcomplicate the simple, and they honestly refuse to accept facts for what they are, and instead they just spin off into oblivion. And it's a real problem. I think it partially explains the administration, the political administration we have, and the fact that we rank, not great on several levels on the educational ladder, and we are just we're a culture that knows more about what Oprah has done than they know about what science is.
Kardashians. I always thought that they were something on Star Trek What was that? One of the later Star Treks.
Voyager?
No, not Voyager.
By the way,
it was,
I hung my Star Trek Christmas ornament on the tree today. It's got it's the little scene where Spock and Kirk are kneeling by the glass and Wrath of Khan. That was a little Hallmark ornament, and I put it up today and took a photograph. And that's my favorite piece of Christmas right there.
I've got this.
Awesome.
He was resurrected.
Wait a minute. Are you pulling? I don't see anything.
It's kind of hard to see it.
Andy?
Right, because the
yeah.
I'm terrified he's going to pull
Why are you
more
pulling your
clothing
shirt off?
No way.
Because he's got the comm badge tattooed on
Right?
his chest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I got
I
that.
got Star Wars on my
tattoo
tree.
to your body.
Yes, I have. Yes.
You win.
Right there. You've got the nerd cred right there.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it.
I want your autograph.
And it's the science one, not the command one.
Well
it's
played.
The science one.
Well played, my friend.
Because I was a big fan of Spock. So.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, back at the end of the day, I think we're going to have to deal with these things short term with in a punitive way. But I think long term, the only way to defeat these bad ideas is with better ideas, with better education, by removing the distrust of science and the benefits that science bring us.
I got to get rid of DeVos and get rid of what? I mean, it's going backwards so badly with this administration.
I may need a place to stay on weekends. I'm just saying. I may need a place because it's getting bad down here.
Yeah, it's not going to get better right now.
That's weird because we went the other way. I know there's a lot of things been said about Trudeau in terms of his, a bit too the other way from Harper, but Harper was definitely
anti-science.
Oh.
Yeah.
He did a lot of things that
and technology was.
Did I read that Trudeau's they're actually planning a formal apology for how LGBTQ people have been treated in the past?
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of apologies. He just did one for the Indigenous that were ignored by the Harper government.
No, I think under the Harper government there was an apology. Was there not?
There was, but what Trudeau was apologizing for was the groups that Harper denied all of the concessions he gave to the others. There was like a nine groups that he actually ignored and had some excuse for. So, and then he also apologized. He gave the concessions to the people that Harper ignored, and then he made an apology this week for the schools,
residential schools.
Residential schools. Yeah, there was a big.
Yeah.
So is the opposition then sort of are they jumping on that and painting him as sort of a knee-jerk, apology happy weakling? Because that's normally what you see.
Yeah, this is very sincere. There's no doubt about it.
No, I'm not saying he's not sincere. I'm saying, is this political opposition jumping all over him for making these apologies?
No.
Not for that.
I think that would be
But,
a bad move.
For example, that bill talking about Islamophobia.
Oh, that one deserved criticism.
It did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There was a motion passed in the House of Commons that...
Story motion.
It was about... was that about anti-Muslim bigotry, which is a real thing.
Yeah. But they insisted on using the word Islamophobia instead of anti-Muslim bigotry.
A nebulous term,
It's a made-up word. It's a made-up word, Just like you're talking about the merchants of doubt. That's one that's been deployed to shut down, legitimate criticisms of the religion because then, you're an Islamophobe, and it implies racism as though the religion is actually a race, and it's just a way to shut people down of discussing legitimate things that we should be talking about.
Well, it also means radical Islam has in that way won because it strategically uses Islamophobia as a term, as a conversation stopper.
Yes.
And so if they change the language in that way, it means that they're probably doing some kind of a high five over there because that's exactly what they wanted instead of being, fair game for criticism and scrutiny. Now, whenever we scrutinize a superstition, the superstition of Islam, they can just scream Islamophobia, and they're supposedly insulated from said criticism. It's pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
and it's the conservatives that were, essentially speaking up on that, and I totally agree with them on that one.
Yeah, and I would never vote conservative in a million years.
Yeah. but once in a while they get it right. But, our conservatives are pretty, like shift the spectrum to the left, I guess, right? Because when I think about like Hillary Clinton, I think she is super conservative. Like, do you? Yeah.
Is. From a Canadian perspective,
so.
She is.
Yeah,
she's farther right,
way off to the right
than the conservatives are here. So it's very very different political
depends
spectrum.
On some of the topics. Yeah.
Well, okay, on access to abortion and that kind of thing, that she's definitely left of the conservatives. But most of the other stuff, she's pretty right.
Foreign policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't contribute. I'm
different.
Just a Yankee.
It's just different.
Okay,
I'm a dual, so I can do both sides, right?
All right.
Well,
I vote in California.
You asked the question of, was there pushback, from the conservatives? And no, not on those things, but that's where you get the pushback is, on things that sometimes we actually agree with, right? So, and to position Hillary Clinton as being what Canadians would perceive to be quite conservative, like that's where we're at here, right? So, yeah.
I still voted for her. But
well,
Trump's not my fault.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
We all know it should have been Bernie, right? It should have been Bernie.
Bernie had baggage.
Anyway.
Bernie's got even more baggage now after this.
Yeah. Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent again. About Trudeau. The biggest difference between Trudeau and his predecessor was this, and it was the press gallery, the press conference room at the House of Commons was closed by Stephen Harper because he didn't like the press. And the very day after Trudeau was installed as prime minister, he reopened it because it was that's the difference between these two. It was just night and day.
It's different parties completely, though, too.
Well, yeah, of course. But completely different worldviews.
The Harper government was more like the Trump government. They just weren't as loud and ridiculous about it because at least Harper had some dignified sense to him and kept everything on the down low, what he was doing, whereas Trump just brags about it.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Trust me.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's probably better to know. You guys are probably in a better position to fight Trump than we were to fight Harper. We had scientists marching on Ottawa and no one even noticed. No one even cared.
Yeah, when scientists actually come get uppity, something's really wrong.
And they still ignored them.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to Trump and his Twitter feed, I saw somebody post, speaking of Star Trek, I saw a Star Trek meme where it's like every morning when I log on to Facebook and Twitter, it says, damage report. That's what it's like here in the United States of America. That's how I feel. For sure.
And you get the report. You get to see the damage. Whereas Harper, it was hidden. You didn't get to see it.
There was a
That's true. I mean, it's more stealthy. It's more sneaky. It's more clandestine. At least the insanities, and not that people care, but at least the insanity is transparent and on full display. I'm hoping that at some point, the 50 states come to their senses, and we are looking at the challenge beyond, the insanity of the Trump administration. We're seeing the presidency itself is potentially forever diminished. We have lowered the bar to such a degree that I fear that we have changed the perceptions of what a presidency is, what it does, what it should aspire to, who deserves to have the office. I think this may be irreparably harmed, and I try not to be fatalistic about it, but I don't see the upside. Even when the pendulum swings back, and I'm sure it will, we have diminished the office of the presidency of the United States in such a way that it just doesn't mean what it once meant to be president. And I don't know how you get past that. So.
Is it possible to make some laws now about this to prevent that? We have Canada has a monarchy kind of overseeing us. If our guys were acting like Trump, they can step in. We have a governor general. We have.
It's awesome, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
our Governor
she's
General.
Science. She's pro-science. Former
She's very
astronaut.
anti-pseudoscience.
She's amazing.
She got
I think I saw a
criticized
news
for that.
report about her. Didn't she give a speech where she went after the creationists? And
Yep.
I mean, it was just awesome.
It seems
She's
like
awesome.
she didn't go after the creationists. She just went after people who go after science, and then of course the people who go after science get offended, which are creationists.
She did go after people who deny evolution.
Yeah, I think that's what I inferred from her little presentation or speech, whatever it was. And I was like, that's just God's beauty. It's so candid to hear somebody speak like that without worrying about, the poll numbers and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm weary of the whole process. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did you see the what is it? The liaison to Canada. What do you call that? You guys, the Canadians here. The one that said that there's two sides to the climate change. Two sides to evolution.
The consulate,
the Trump
the consular
appointee.
general.
Yes, yeah. I'm just like,
gosh,
that's who you've assigned to represent you in Canada. Okay.
We just had, it was just a few years back, Senator Jen Inhofe went into the Senate chamber, right? And he's holding a snowball. He's holding it up, being like, things have gotten cold enough for a snowball, and yet people say there's global. I mean, to him, this was a compelling argument. Mm-hmm. Of course, and all the rest of us we cocked our heads like a cocker spaniel, like what? Yeah. Exactly is this man trying to accomplish? I used to be a climate change skeptic. I came out of, I had to change my mind on a great many issues just because I had to re-examine them after coming out of the faith. I used to be pro-death penalty. You kill somebody, we'll kill you back kind of thing. They deserve it. And I came out and began to see it from a different point of view and to see how disproportionately it is used. And I came to the realization that I don't have to kill people to protect society or to punish. When it came to a woman's right to choose, I had to reevaluate that. When it came to the legalization of drugs, I had to reevaluate all these things. Climate change is one of those deals where I came out thinking, well, those scientists, they're all a bunch of secular humanists. And now I'm like, hey, why in the world would I not listen to an avalanche of scientific data which supports human-caused climate change? And there's also a great poster meme cartoon out there that has a great point. And it's like, what if we were wrong, but we actually moved toward a more sustainable, clean, healthier future for its own sake? Yeah,
what's the downside?
And I'm like, what is the downside? Why wouldn't we be working with everything we had to try to live cleaner, healthier, more sustainable lives? And, and stack the deck in our favor to be responsible stewards. I'm no longer that dominionist that thinks that, everything belongs to God and he's going to sweep up anyway. The only people who are going to do it is us. And, but we're fighting the scientific fight. We're fighting to protect the work of scientists. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I do think it is going to get better.
That brings up a really interesting
change
point.
The laws there about who you can elect for president and what he can do while he's in office.
The challenge is, though, is when you have a system where you have tens of millions of voters who are scientifically illiterate, or who are so. You see the Christians going for Trump, and Trump, if you look at the best verses of the Bible, Trump is the antithesis of the best Jesus. He's arrogant when the Bible says to be meek. He's vengeful when the Bible says to turn the other cheek. He is proud when the Bible says to be humble. He is lustful when it says not to have lustful thoughts. He is the antithesis. And yet,
he's the Antichrist.
I think, when you see people who there's sort of a hero worship going on, there's an authoritarian narrative going on. And in some ways, there's a desire to maintain power, even if it means selling yourself out, selling your own values out, or maybe even more terrifying, what if these are our values? And that's why they love them. I mean, on every level, it just sucks.
No win. There's no win.
I need a couch to sleep on the weekends. That's all I just let me come up and stay on the
room. I have a whole spare room.
You're totally welcome here. Yeah.
I'll bring the dog.
You and yours. Yeah.
We'll do some curling,
Absolutely.
Just help me.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted to move up to Canada, but they found out it's not that easy. And it's cold.
Yeah.
Why would you
Well,
someplace warm?
And if we get a Harper con government again, we're going to be no better off again.
And we probably
it's always one step forward, two step back. One step forward, two steps back. It's
We had a lot of refugees crossing the border in super dangerous conditions over the winter and that kind of thing.
Lost their hands even.
Yeah.
Lost fingers.
Because Trump.
You
lie.
No.
Wait a minute. People were making an illegal pilgrimage into Canada?
Yes, especially Haitians.
Oh,
especially Haitians.
I was thinking
from USA.
Yep.
Yeah, people that were refugees in the USA.
Oh, refugees here.
People in danger of
the
deportation.
USA and
Because Trump got in office and
I was thinking, just disgruntled Democrats
no
over the border losing their limbs.
Maybe some of those
losing limbs. I think they know enough to take a plane. I don't know.
That's one of the
it's late. I'm tired. I didn't track. I'm sorry.
Well, I can understand the way we described it.
Freaking Minnesotans climbing over the fence going, oh my gosh, it's just so darn terrible down here. And Trump's just a real darn mess, Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Well, there are memes. There are memes of Melania doing that.
Now I don't have any darn hands. They're all gone, So, gosh.
It just froze right off like that. I didn't know it got that cold.
I can't do oofta like the Norwegians. Never mind. But no, I mean it's we're hopefully going to see the pendulum swing. We've got to do something about Pence, who is the vice president here, and he's much more slick and in some ways a lot more scary.
More like Harper.
Yeah.
He's slick and he's smooth, and he is he'll be able to provide the polish and the measured tongue and that square-shouldered sort of authority. He's going to look good on TV. He's going to play right into what the church narrative. He is, in some ways, very much more dangerous than Donald Trump.
Yeah,
and he's in power too. You have both right now. You do have both.
Well, Pence is kind of an afterthought. I mean, I honestly think Trump's just like the Tasmanian devil in the old Warner Brother cartoons. He just around everywhere he goes, he does his own thing. Just. And that's all he. And everybody in his cabinet's like, oh God,
that's so funny.
Oh God, how long? But as long as he's there doing his thing, there's not a whole lot everybody else is going to be able to do. But after if he walks, if he quits, if he's impeached, which I used to think was inevitable, but now not so much. We're going to have to see a strong candidate against him. And I'll tell you something else. We're going to have to see us become much, much, much less petty about running against him, about defeating him in 2020. One thing about the whole Bernie thing, and I liked Bernie, and there was a lot I liked. I didn't think Hillary was a great candidate, but, there was a lot I admired about her. To see people tear each other to pieces
over those two
and ignore the larger battle against this force. We are so eager to shoot ourselves in the foot, and we paid.
Well, there's so many people so convinced that the DNC did something criminal and they got rid of Bernie and it was all just criminal and she should be in jail, and they agree with Trump, lock her up because they believe Bernie it was illegal.
I get it. If you like Bernie, vote for Bernie. But the truth is, if it was Bernie or no one, or you were going to not show up, if you were going to opt out and not participate, I just don't get this. I just don't understand it.
Well, and after Trump got elected, 100 in riots in Portland, 120 some odd protesters were arrested. 86 didn't vote.
Yep, majority of them
what
didn't
is
even
wrong
vote,
with this picture?
But they're angry.
The stupidity of people.
Yeah, well,
you don't get
Hillary
to complain if you didn't participate.
You can't vote for the criminal though. You can't.
Yeah.
Some people just want to be part of something, and they'll jump on any bandwagon without really
the damage that
surface
WikiLeaks
dwellers,
did.
right?
The damage that WikiLeaks did, the damage that Pizzagate did, all of this Russian interference. I see the people that are putting this information forward. It's not fake news. It's not the propaganda artists. It's this stuff had an effect on the people. It convinced them that they couldn't vote for her. That it was, in fact, some of the Bernie busters even voted for Trump. It was that awful against Hillary. People believe that stuff. And if you can't fight this misinformation, which we can't, I mean, obviously people are killing their kids with oregano oil. What do? That's where I'm stuck.
Oh, I didn't mean to get her all worked up. She just
we call her
don't
feisty
get
twat.
this woman pissed off.
My moniker's feisty.
But all of this,
I'm glad she's on our team. I'll tell you. I mean, I want to mess with her for sure.
But all of this there's an undercurrent here when we think about religion, climate change denial, homeopathy, Reiki. There's an undercurrent of that really ties all of it together, and it's not just religion and these other things. There's a similar mode of thinking that is the same in all of these areas.
Lack of critical thinking.
Education.
And tribalism. And the quest for power.
Identity politics.
And a lot of people who have a distrust of, they have a distrust of the simplest answer. Occam's razor for them did not really work out. That's why we still see 9/11 truthers here. The year 2017, we go through it every September. It's, I don't know, and I've come to a point in my life where I've become. It's almost like getting hit on the head with a hammer all the time. You log on and you see the white noise of the information age, and as information clashes against misinformation, science against pseudoscience, reason against religion, and you just think, God, everyone's shouting, nobody's listening. Sometimes it just shuts you down, and you have to just walk away and reset. I found myself sometimes just thinking, where's the off button? How do I when did we stop talking to each other? When did we stop listening to each other? Did we ever listen to each other? And ultimately, at the end of the day, in my own life, I have focused, as we approach 2018, I've focused on a desire to do a better job of speaking, not shouting, of trying to listen, trying to genuinely try to open my ears and understand. And then when the times come for outrage and for us to just, pound the drum and go out and really raise some hell, it means something. It's not just part of the din that is the sort of the outrage culture, and truly be an advocate for those who need us, for those who are suffering, and for those who deserve a better world, and we can do a better job of working to that end. So that's sort of my goal, a personal goal, very nebulous one, I guess, but I'm going to try to implement it in my own life as much as I can. So
that's
likewise, I think like defending free speech is really important because when you look at the international context, like blasphemy laws are unacceptable, and those countries that still have them on our books just justify those countries that enact them in really, really harsh ways, right? And I forget what I was going to say.
You're
Sorry.
going to probably talk about Canada
Berkeley to try to make it create
Canada.
a fear culture where people can't open their mouths. And I think to myself, I'm sorry that the way to defeat bad speech is more speech.
Yes.
Yes. And here's what I was going to say is that this dilution of words, like, if you run around calling everybody a Nazi, well, first of all, there are no Nazis anymore. There are neo-Nazis to be sure, but that really, I can't imagine how I would feel if I were a Holocaust survivor, that was in my family or whatever, right? Like, I'm offended by it enough just, having an upbringing where I was, taught about the Holocaust in my home and to respect that and to take it very seriously. And, the world should be taking this seriously, right? So when words like that get tossed around, it really, it offends me.
You get triggered?
No, it does. I do get triggered, and I think deploying those kinds of words should be reserved for specific contexts because they're just being tossed around and they've lost all meaning now,
Yeah.
Like being called, for example, an Islamophobe. Well, everybody's been called an Islamophobe, so, right? Yeah. But to be, like an anti-Muslim bigot, I think that's a very serious thing, right? I wouldn't like to be called that, but I know, like, for example, we all know Faisal, right? And he gets called these things, So
yeah, I'm sorry. The guy who escaped, the ex-Muslim who escaped Iraq, is a white supremacist sympathizer. I just, who are these people? I just
and the logic.
The SPLC, Majid Nawaz and Ayaan Hirsi Ali being deemed as anti-Muslim extremists. Oh, wow.
Yeah, really? They just lost the plot. Just blows my mind.
Yeah. Which I guess maybe takes us to the next story about Linda.
They doubled down too. Yeah. I suppose we could talk about the whole free speech thing at Wilfrid Laurier. That was,
I'm so glad she recorded that.
Did this make the news in the U.S. at all? Probably not. I mean, nothing in Canada.
Not really.
The news. Okay. I mean, we had a terror incident up here. I don't even think it made the news down there in Edmonton. It was somebody used a vehicle to run people down. It probably didn't make it down there either. But we feel so.
Well, that was the same time. Well, I think it was like a day within the Texas thing, right? Or sorry, the Vegas shooting, right?
Yeah.
So that pretty much hijacked the headlines.
Anyway,
right? Yeah.
So this whole thing happened at Wilfrid Laurier University, where a teaching assistant played a clip from a TV Ontario program had Jordan Peterson on there, and none of us here really usually agrees with Jordan Peterson on that much, but he's got some salient points on the law which would force government workers, anybody who'd represented the government, to use whatever pronouns somebody chooses, other than he, she, and the usual ones. And she brought that in as a talking point to talk about pronouns. Now, I can see talking about pronouns being really, really boring, like super, super boring. And this is something that this TA, Lindsay Shepherd, brought in to show her class and have a discussion on this. And somebody complained to her supervisor, and her supervisor, instead of unpacking the complaint, just took it at face value and called her into a meeting. And they had this. I'm going to play the audio from this. Okay. Let me see if I can find it. Here's the meeting. This is edited. This is not the full 1 hour. This is a shortened version that was released for news media. Okay, anytime now.
Like I said, it was in the spirit of debate.
Okay, in the spirit of debate.
It's doubling up. Let's try it again.
Like I said, it was in the spirit of debate.
Okay, in the spirit of the debate is slightly different than being like, okay, this is like a problematic idea that we want to unpack.
But that's taking sides.
Yes.
Like, it's taking sides for me to be like, oh, look at this guy. Like, everything that comes out of his mouth is BS, but we're going to watch anyway.
Okay. So I understand the position that you're coming from and your positionality, but the reality is that it has created a toxic climate for some of the students.
How many?
It's great that...
Ooh, like how many?
Okay.
One?
May I speak?
I have no concept of like how many people complained, like what their complaint was. You haven't showed me the complaint.
Yes, I understand that this is upsetting, but there's also confidentiality matters.
The number of people is confidential?
Yes. Do you see where, like, how this is not something like that's intellectually neutral, that is kind of up for debate? This is the Charter of Rights and
Freedoms. But it is up for debate.
But, I mean, you're perfectly welcome to your own opinions, but when you're bringing it into the context of the classroom, that can become problematic. And that can become something that creates an unsafe learning environment for students.
But when they leave the university, they're going to be exposed to these ideas. So I don't see how I'm doing a disservice to the class by exposing them to ideas that are really out there. And I'm sorry I'm crying. I'm stressed out because this to me is so wrong. It's so wrong.
Can I mention the gendered violence gendered and sexual violence policy.
Do you understand how what happened contrary to? Sorry, Adrian, what was the policy? The gendered and sexual violence policy. Like, do you understand how?
But sorry, what did I violate in that policy?
So, gender-based violence, transphobia in that policy, causing harm to trans students by framing their identity as invalid or their pronouns as invalid.
Or something
potentially invalid.
So I caused harm,
which is
violence.
Under the Ontario Human Rights Code, a protected thing, and also something that Laurier holds as a value.
Okay. So by proxy of me showing you a video, I'm transphobic and I caused harm and violence. So be it. I can't do anything to control that.
Okay, so that's not something that you have an issue with? These are very young students. And something of that nature is not appropriate to that age of student because they don't
18?
have... 18? Yes.
They're adults.
Yes, but they're very young adults. They don't have the critical toolkit to be able to take it apart yet. This is one of the things that we're teaching them, and so this is why it becomes something that has to be done with a bit more care.
I'm going to end it there. I'm just speechless at this meeting. I mean, there might be an issue like having a meeting with, everybody involved and sitting down and working through it, but this is accusatory from the get-go. And Lindsay makes some very good points. This is a university setting. This is where you're supposed to examine things dispassionately. And it just escalated. In fact, the name Hitler comes up in the discussion. It's
really
straight up.
Yeah.
What's that law?
Godwin's
law.
Yeah.
And what the hell? It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It was a bizarre meeting. So they basically stomped on her creativity and ruined her whole tenure at Wilfrid Laurier. She's probably never going to go back. So.
I hope not. I hope another institution takes her in and she never looks back after that experience. That was just shameful.
I think
absolutely shameful.
Why in the world would we not be exposing people to ideas? Good, bad, or indifferent?
And how could you have a relationship with your supervisor after that kind of calling down?
Look them in the
and
face.
Thank goodness she, how could she? Thank goodness she recorded that.
And how patronizing is it to say, well, they're only 18. They can't properly unpack what you're trying to tell them. So we need to package it in a way so that it doesn't accost their delicate sensibilities. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It just makes no sense. It's not how education works. It's not how the real world works, for Pete's sake.
And she also patronizing was, please, submit all your lesson plans in advance.
Yeah, at the end, that was just humiliating.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, we're seeing some arguments here in the States here and there about, what is or isn't. I mean, when they're talking about how she created, I'm talking about Lindsay Shepherd created an unsafe environment. Yes. You got to be shitting me. I mean, come on. What are we talking about?
What is an unsafe learning environment?
And they are, there's this weird language is violence narrative that sort of piggybacks on top of that. Yes. And of course, the minute I say that with any sort of a critical tone, someone's going to say that, well, Seth believes that language has no power. And of course, they're talking to a professional communicator. I know language has power. Okay, I do language for a living. All right, I've written a couple of books. I understand the power of language. And language can be tremendously harmful, and it can be it can be transcendent, be wonderful. That saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt me." I just think that's one of the worst things ever said to anybody because words can be tremendously harmful. Yeah. But, we exist, if you're going to exist in the arena of ideas, we have to be able to have those ideas heard. And so by presenting that an adult forum for ideas, the idea that she was making her students unsafe, and she was accused in this sort of a little inquisition.
That she was enacting violence, no less. Like, I can understand where words can be harmful, but they're not violence.
No.
I'm sorry.
These are ideas that need to be dispassionately unpacked and dissected and analyzed. That's how are they supposed to learn that if they're not allowed to do that?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I do know there are people who are, involved in conversations about sexuality and sexual identity who, these are difficult journeys for them, and they're going to be confronted with some difficult situations. And I get that, and we want to be sensitive to that. But, it's not my job to make the world, so,
sanitized.
It's thank you. It's not my job to try to make the world so neutralized that no one anywhere is ever confronted with a difficult situation, idea, or concept. The bigger picture is that we navigate through them together so that we can pursue and embrace the best ideas. And I'd like to see this Lindsay Shepherd land at a place where they're a bit more progressive. Certainly, they're more about education than coddling, that they're not patting their students on the head and trying to keep them safe. I don't want my students to feel safe in terms of ideas. Yes. I want them to be uncomfortable. I want them to be like, oh, I never thought that, when I left religion, it wasn't when I felt safe. It's when my ideas were so rattled that I was squirming in my seat, and I had a knot in my gut, and my whole world had to be re-examined. It was at those moments that I found the cage door and kicked it open and found my liberation. I mean, to keep them safe physically, certainly, but I don't want my students coddled or comfortable. I want them to be uncomfortable and to be trained to think and not be told how to or what to think. So.
And that's what she did.
That's part of the pleasure of teaching too. Like, you're going to take away everybody's passion to teach if you stifle people like that. And I have to say, so it came up on our Facebook posting about this, and somebody asked me, does this happen at the U of C? And that very evening, I had received a call from somebody whose name I shall not mention, but I did say I would bring it up here in this podcast, that this person had a similar experience, and it had to do with political and religious beliefs. And this person did record it, but doesn't want to go down that avenue. But I think it's important that I share that story, even though, it's just here in our podcast among a few of us, and hopefully some listeners will, but the question was like, how far is this? How pervasive is this? And I wouldn't have expected that from this particular situation, but so I just wanted to mention that because I feel obligated, having been contacted, and I think it's really important that even though I can't say a lot of details, I've been permitted to say that at that minimum amount, right? So
I tried to reach out to Lindsay because I wanted to ask her a question. What was it that made her decide to record the meeting? I think it's something told her to record this meeting, and I'm wondering what.
I think it's just general good practice too. If you can, for example, if you're having an email exchange, it's just good practice to
save
keep
the emails. Yeah.
I guess. A record of correspondence and anything. I mean, even if it's, I don't know, I do graphic design, and I just want to keep that paper trail to make sure that I did my due diligence. I, submitted this proof or whatever. I can always go back and backtrack. So it just makes sense to record your activities, but in a threatening situation, that would be wise,
Yeah, she probably saw the writing on the wall when she was called into a meeting. Hey, we'd like to see you at 4 on this issue. She's probably like, all right, it's time to make sure this is well documented, and good for her.
Yeah.
Yes, and she's clearly not ignorant of what Jordan Peterson has been through. So, exactly, she wasn't ignorant of the context in which she was presenting that information, but I think she was absolutely right in the way she explains it. It was a course on grammar, and they were talking about gender pronouns.
It's totally
even if it wasn't a course
entirely
about
relevant.
Yeah, if we were going to talk about, if we were in a sociology class or we were in a sexuality debate or discussion, I mean, we're talking about the human condition in any number of contexts. I think it's a fair forum. For Pete's sake, let's stop, trying to protect kids from ideas. I have a feeling the vast majority of them don't need or want to be protected. They want to engage, man. They're like, just give me a shot, put me in, coach. I don't need to be coddled. I am an adult, and I'm ready to tackle these issues and figure out how my own mind on the deal. And I think we give him that shot. We give him every opportunity to do that.
Laurier and Rambucan, Nathan Rambucan's the supervisor, wrote letters of apology. But if you read those letters, they're not apologies, and they have no clue as to why they should be apologizing. And I
got the vibe they were apologizing for the tone of the meeting. Yeah. Like, this wasn't, she wasn't addressed in the way that we would have addressed her.
She wasn't supported. But the fact is, there shouldn't have been a meeting.
Yeah,
they don't get it.
And in that meeting, they implied that she didn't get it, right? Like they kept asking her, "Do you understand why?" Blah blah blah, and they're like so bloody oblivious. It's so frustrating, you know.
They haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the science minister came out and said, the federal science minister came out and said that we have to have free speech on campuses, but not harmful speech. I'm like, what does that mean?
And good luck defining it, right? Good luck in a subjective culture where everybody's harmful speech is somebody else's non-harmful speech. Good luck with that. Good luck enforcing it. Good luck defining it. Come on. I mean, it just it makes no sense to me.
So. Yeah, so the conservatives picked up on that, and rightfully so, I think.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's always framed around, it's the conservatives that are defending free speech. No,
or
it's
the
not.
alt-right.
Even the media does that here. Yeah,
that's
I know.
What Rambucan said. It's these alt-right people have a problem with these pronouns. It's a bit more than that.
I don't have a problem with the pronouns.
But what about the people who are not alt-right, right? What are the people? What about liberal and progressive people who are still, even now, being educated and navigating these complex issues, trying to know their own mind? How in the world do we educate ourselves if we can't talk to each other?
Yeah, exactly. If you say something like what we're talking about now, you'll be called, I don't know, transphobic or whatever. And I have no.
It's emotionally charged discussion.
It's about the issue of free speech.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a term that Matt Dillahunty. I've got a jet here in just a few minutes. I know we're hitting almost the 90-minute mark, but Matt Dillahunty has a term that I really like. It's called charitable listening, and it's amazing how little of it there is. Like how often I hear someone say something and I automatically assume that they're attacking me or attacking my pet issue or someone I love or, a worthy cause. I mean, they must have the worst intention. And if we would listen more charitably and stop and not assume, maybe they don't understand. Maybe they have a genuinely good heart. Maybe they said something that was kind of offensive, but at the moment they weren't aware. They just didn't know. Maybe they're just operating from ignorance, and this is a teachable moment. And then, after we do all that and do our due diligence and answer those questions and tap on the glass and find out what they're really about, we may find out that they are genuinely awful people, and then we can genuinely be outraged, and then we can genuinely go on the attack against whatever evil they might be about. But until then, why would we create enemies that might be advocates, that could be allies, that someone who might actually be this close to being on our page and we could work together? And instead, we want to square off and kick off the online flame wars, and it just hurts the heart.
Yeah,
but again, that's back to my.
Well, I guess that's
it's associated with binary thinking.
It's a principle of Socratic dialogue. This interpretation of charity principle, right? So it goes way back, and the earlier podcast I participated in, we were talking about street epistemology, and essentially that's what's going on there is engaging somebody in a way by asking them questions to make them think about their own position, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, in a culture of binary thinking, of us versus them, of tribalism, of wanting to win instead of wanting to pursue the best idea, there's so many obstacles in our way. But again, in my own mind, as I approach 2018, as best I can, I want to try to do a better job, and I would hope so many others would. Let's try to listen more. Let's soften our tone a bit. And, when we do that, I'd rather build a bridge or repair a bridge than burn it. But, and then when we do that, if the time does come to tee off and to burn a bridge and to get good and pissed off, it'll mean something, because it wasn't our default setting. It wasn't, we weren't like the busted car alarm that was always going off and everybody just started ignoring it. They just stopped hearing it because that's all we did. Yeah. And so that's sort of a pledge I've made in my own life. And
you should name that pledge something.
Bob, I have no idea. It's late.
We'll have to call it the Seth Andrews pledge now.
I don't know. I
engage respectfully. If you can't do that and you have to say your point, then pull out the tooth and claws or whatever.
Let's go.
Initial, I guess, default should always be to try and engage respectfully.
I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate the conversations that you have, and the fact that you are promoting dialogue and speech and positive conflict and all those things that are necessary to find and promote the best ideas. I think that's massive. It's just huge, and so I'm genuinely thankful for you and who you are and the work you do, and I'm thankful to be a part of the discussion tonight. Really.
Yeah. So thank you for being
on.
It's been we'll have to have you on again. In the
right
future.
Back at you. Yeah.
Have your people contact my people.
And we'll curl. We'll curl.
And then we'll curl afterwards.
I think I'm other people's people. That's the problem. I have no people. It's like my daughter and her dog. I'm their people, right?
I'm my cat's people.
I have a cat too. So yeah.
Well, forgive me for bailing on you, but it has been a real joy and a real pleasure, and I look forward to the next chance we get an opportunity to speak. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
And it was wonderful to see you. Take care.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Go. Night.
You've been listening to the Legion of Reason Diversion, coming to you from Alberta, Canada. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to our bi-weekly podcast on iTunes and other podcatchers. Even better, subscribe to our YouTube live sessions where you can join in on the discussion. Thanks for giving us a listen. Music and other sound effects under license from audioblocks.com.